Good afternoon, everybody. Eddie Webb. We are here at the New Media Lab at Mesa Community College. We are continuing our presidential podcast series, and we are very fortunate today to have Dr. Peterson from Chandler Gilbert Community College. Dr. Peterson has been leading Chandler Gilbert since July of 2018. Prior to his time at the Chandler Gilbert campus, he served as Vice President of Services and Instructions at 3 minority-serving institutions in California. He's presented at the White House for both presidents as a part of the Domestic Policy Council. He has a long history of working for Hispanic Association of Colleges and workforce economic development. Obviously, he is a president. His credentials are impressive. Dr. Peterson, welcome to the New Media Lab.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So what we'd like to do is to really shine light on all of the good work of Chandler Gilbert. And one of the ways we do that is to focus on your mission and values statement. Now, you've been there 5 years, so are these your mission and values, or did you inherit these?
So these here are inherited. We're actually in the process right now of crafting our new mission and vision statements. So the college, we've got a session tomorrow to look at our final couple options for our mission statement and our vision statement.
Any breaking news on that front? What's the big departure?
I think it's an attempt to be a little bit more focused, to really be a little bit more clear about our commitments.
Any particular example?
It's not going to deviate too far from what you're seeing in our current mission and vision there.
Yeah.
But really, we want to make sure that we're clear about how we live our values and how those are expressed in our mission and our vision, and that we're a little bit more open about the change we hope that we can influence in our communities.
So a part of your mission is that you're a student-centered college that creates learning experiences and growth opportunities designed for our diverse communities. What does that mean?
So Chandler Gilbert is probably the most value-driven organization I've ever worked at. And a key to that is learning and innovation in learning. So when we talk about those learning experiences, how do we have more active, more integrative learning? You'll see lots of service learning, co-curricular. We're a leader in the nation with learning communities. We just hosted the National Learning Community Conference this past year. We do a lot of co-curricular. So really thinking about undergraduate research, ways that we can engage students in applied ways of learning. So that's more meaningful, more purposeful. And then second in our values is really inclusion. So really thinking about how we serve our local communities. As a community college, we're very much grounded in our community. So the Southeast Valley, that's Chandler, Gilbert, East Mesa, Queen Creek. And so really thinking about who are in our communities and how are they accessing education.
Excellent. We do a lot of, here in the New Media Lab, we call it, we started with modernizing the written word, and we were out there doing presentations, and that was going over really good. And now our title is A New Way of Learning on our Westward projects and all of that stuff, where there's not just one teacher in the room that has to know everything. I'm now splitting my contract with other folks in team teaching classes. And then we have our staff, Keegan and Aubrey here, and they show up for class, and there's 4 of us in the room teaching. And it's absolutely amazing because it is a true learning community. But before we get too deep into the values, we want to know a little bit about your story. How did you get into education and eventually administration? What drew you into public service?
So I grew up in a blue-collar community outside of Portland, Oregon. And, our students really, they look at their options based on what they're exposed to. And so there were like 5 jobs that I knew I could be growing up: a police officer, a doctor, but I couldn't do that because I was too poor. I could be a teacher, I could be a postman, right? And so I loved learning, so teaching became the option. And in that process, I thought I was going to be in K-12. So I was really interested in second grade. And so I went to the local community college and I waited an hour in line at the counseling office to meet with the counselor and sat down. And they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to be a second grade teacher." And of course, at that time, it's the early 90s. There's lots of stories about men in K-12 and how that's not a good space. And so he looked at me and said, "No, you don't." And I'm first generation student, college student. So I said, "Okay, so what do I want to do?" And he said, "Well, you're going to have to schedule another appointment, come back. We don't have time to explore that." So I left believing that K-12 couldn't be an option, but I still wanted to be education. So I decided I was going to go into high school. I was transitioning from the community college into university, and I had to spend the summer finding a job. So I ended up working at a furniture factory, which was another reason to go to college. It's probably the worst job I've ever had. I was working with these amazing people, mainly immigrants, and who had so much hope for their families and so much that they wanted to accomplish. And I realized that they were stuck in these jobs that I was just barely surviving for 2 weeks and didn't have options. And that really drew me into this world of ESL, English as a second language. And so I taught English as a second language at Portland Community College. And one day I was asked to serve on a committee, and we started looking at data, and I realized that of my students who, the majority of my students said that they wanted to continue on to get a college degree, and less than 1% would ever achieve that based on our data. And that got me thinking about systems and structures and how we could change those, which is more kind of that administration space. And so that led me to continue on to a doctoral degree in educational administration. And then move into student services and then instruction and then finally the presidency.
Well, what a great reason to become involved in education. You were driven by your own natural instincts and desires. And I think that's the best way, to get anywhere. In some of your values, you talk about innovation and exploration. How does that work? I mean, it seems on the surface obvious, but what are the practical ways that innovation and exploration happen at a public community college?
The more we can provide students with opportunities to be exposed to new things. One of the big ways for me is our service learning program. We partner every year, and pre-pandemic, we had a larger program where we would send out students. It was an Into the Streets event is what we called it, and we would send out almost 500 students into the community to do service on one day. Post-pandemic, we've now found smaller ways. So we have about the same number of students who participate in some type of service learning where they're working with community organizations, working with cities, with our towns, helping others, experiencing different perspectives, and then having time to reflect on those experiences. So it's that exposure, the exploration, which then leads students to see the world differently. And innovation really is about seeing the world differently and seeing new possibilities. And so that's led to different opportunities in our entrepreneurial space. So our business department does a big pitch every year for our students who are trying to start their own businesses. And so, building on the energy of helping students see where they can make a difference, where they can be engaging at a civic level, where they can be engaging in a new business venture, where they're seeing new opportunities as they explore things that they hadn't known before.
Wow. Yeah. If you're listening out there, you might want to stop by Chandler Gilbert Community College. Yeah, that's exciting, man. I think learning through experiences, it's the future, right? Because the reason I was asking the question, you have innovation, exploration, experiences, growth, all of these fun words. But traditionally, a community college had been either occupational or transfer. So the teaching was very behavioral in terms of, this is how you write a sentence. This is, all of these basic skills. where you get to the good part of learning doesn't happen until, you're almost your master's degree in some way. And so to see that you all are out, and that's all I hear about Chandler Gilbert is about your innovation in ways. And I think you're recapturing perhaps what the intent of learning was, is to build a healthy citizenry, so we have a healthy community. So, and it's all engaged and centered around thought.
I want to come back to your comment. I'm so fortunate to be able to work with an amazing faculty and staff. Our faculty have really embraced this integrative learning as a core of who we are. And so it's interesting because as we talk about outcomes, as we talk about economic mobility as a part of a healthy community, as a civic investment as a part of a healthy community, and then, kind of this transfer into those spaces, it's really our faculty who have led in that work. And, so I think part of that, so we've talked about that innovation and learning, about the inclusion. Another key aspect historically for Chandler Gilbert has been in the sustainability space. So as a college, we've done a lot of work around finding ways to be more sustainable. Even in our landscaping, how we think about, we have a solar farm on campus. So we've tried to do some things to as an institution model sustainability. We have an environmental technology center on campus, and it's an opportunity, regardless of what class you're in, to bring students out. You can do planting, so there's some farming that happens there. You can just be in a space and explore the world around us in your assignments. So we're trying to find ways to expose student sustainability. We did have some really cool examples of where this has kind of flourished in our engineering program a couple of years back. Students took on a project to create a green waste biodegradable system. So we had all of this food waste on campus, and so how could we find a way to create an actual tool that would help break that down quickly and then make a mulch that could then go back into our landscaping. And so the students designed that, actually got national recognition for it. It was an innovation of the district that year. So some cool projects in that way as we're trying to engage students in this idea of how do we think about sustainability?
And as president, do you clear the path for things like, because when I think about all the legal stuff and the health stuff and the risk stuff, anytime we want to do something, you have to do a risk assessment of this, like as the president leading this college, it's got to be a great thing to kind of clear the path for this stuff. How's that work?
Yeah, I feel like all the great work happens with the faculty and staff and students, right? My job is just to help create space for those things to happen. And so it's those conversations of saying, this risk is okay. And, this is our values and we should be doing this. And how do we build space to do this? And sometimes taking the blame if we get in trouble, which is fine, right? Because if it leads out to where we need to go, sometimes someone needs to do that. It's part of being part of this team, really moving our mission forward.
Yeah. And risk taking. This is one thing. The poet laureate for the last several years in DC, Joy Harjoy, wrote a book all about her failures. And that we don't talk about our failures enough because we're afraid to take the risk. And that's exactly what we should be doing. Failing is a good thing. When you're taking risk and you're trying to be bold and create innovation, you learn as much from that as you do when it's easy and it works, And I think that's what the kind of culture we need is more risk takers, to try things. It sounds like, that you're well on your way from that, of doing that.
Yeah, we created a couple years back, we created what we call the Moxie Award. And the intent of that is just to do that, to celebrate failure, to celebrate where people have stepped up and things haven't turned out the best,
I love that.
But we're recognizing their effort.
That's amazing. That's health. That's a healthy community, right? So a little bit of your values talks about the DEI measure. What kind of how do you see DEI, and what are the obstacles you feel um, prevent diversity in classrooms and in the workspace?
So I think, so for me, coming back to the core mission of the community college, we're the democracy of education. We're here to serve everyone in our communities. And I think that's the core of diversity, equity, inclusion is really that access, that success. It's really making sure that our entire communities thrive. And we all benefit when our entire communities thrive. The challenges come when our communities fail to understand that broader benefit. When we help raise all individuals, all of our boats rise. No one would assume that if I handed you an iPhone 1, right, and then said, well, we've always used an iPhone 1, no one would assume that that technology is still good now. Our world has changed. And yet in education, we still hold on to practices from the 1950s, from the 1960s, the fear, the discomfort with change. That needs to happen to support where we are as a community, and who is in our community. We're fortunate in Arizona. When we look at our demographics, Chandler Gilbert is a Hispanic serving institution. So we're about almost 30% of our students self-identify as being of Hispanic Latinx descent. We also have, just being in Arizona, if any state should be committed to the success of our Native Americans, Arizona with our 22 tribal nations, this is our community. And so as we think about how our communities around us are thriving, so, for us, we recognize that we have students from all 22 tribes, but with Gila River Indian community right next to us, it's really important for us to be collaborating to make sure that as part of our community that they're successful. And to do that, we have to think differently about our systems and structures and really understand the needs of our communities. So I think some of the challenges are being humble, being willing to understand that we need to change, helping foster a comfort with change. You mentioned before about taking those risks around change. It's about us becoming better and more willing to be open to serve those around us.
Yeah, brilliant. I think in many ways our scheduling and our calendars still mimic farming culture, right? Like our students aren't working on the farm anymore. They can get that class done in 8 weeks, right? They don't need to take time off to plant and harvest and turn soil. They're not even doing that stuff, right? So we could get a lot of this stuff done in 8 weeks instead of,
Such a great example.
It's unbelievable to me sometimes. I just shake my head, and I am a tribal member. And fun fact, in 50 years at all 10 campuses, there has never been a tribal member in leadership. We had an interim at your college, actually, interim dean appointed at Chandler Gilbert, and it made national news. This is the first time a tribal member had ever served beyond faculty ever in 50 years in 10 campuses.
Which is crazy. It is craziness.
Yeah.
Now I have to say, Scottsdale currently has an interim dean.
2. I take it back. 2 in 50 years.
But you're right that we think about. Another example I'll give is there's this European kind of approach of, so when I grew up, right, when I hit 18, there's this expectation that I had to grow up and go out on my own and find my own way, right? That's a very unique approach to adulthood, right? As opposed to you're part of this family unit. And as you grow up and become an adult, there's an expectation that you're supporting the family unit. That plays into how we think about education. So if we really are focusing on individualism, then we create these classrooms that are very isolated for students,
right?
And they don't serve our communities that are really connected. And we look at younger generations right now; they're all interconnected. So as we think differently about even the experience in our classrooms around community and how do we build community in the sense of belonging, different than how we thought about belonging in community prior,
Right.
That'll change how learning occurs.
Yeah, That's great insight to community, to learning, to all of that. It's very refreshing to talk about these ideals, but then actually to implement them. And we were just having kind of a wild conversation in here earlier. Although we keep identifying diversity in many ways as a skin color thing, it's much, much deeper than that. It's a cultural thing. So in my tribe, there's a lot of leadership around consensus building, a lot of leadership around what in the old language of even when Thomas Jefferson were building the structures of the foundation of the American government based on the Iroquois Confederacy around the word caucus, which meant that all the clans, all the nations would come together and discuss what's going on. And then decisions were made by consensus instead of this old world model of top-down majority rule governance. And to me, it doesn't matter sort of what the person looks like. It's the culture that they bring to the table. So if we keep using these old models, we keep repeating the same sorts of cultures and behavior. You know what I mean? And so we need to look at diversity in terms of beyond just that and what real cultural diversity looks like, and how do you change these old structures that have been in place forever. It's very, very difficult. It can be very isolating when you start talking about these things. Is the dominant culture is the dominant culture. And to hear what you're doing over there, it sounds like to me in a very positive way, you're disrupting norms, past norms. You got to be thriving over there. What excites you about the future of your 4 campuses?
Oh, there's so much excitement. And I think as we think about the future of community colleges, and especially here in Maricopa, we do need to be more focused. We need to do less but better, like really find our strengths and lean into those strengths. For Chandler Gilbert, we are the only aviation program in the district. So we have 500 students in aviation maintenance, and there's just a growth of opportunity in that space. We have a flight program in partnership with the University of North Dakota. We've got...
Did you say flight?
Flight.
Okay.
So if you want to be a pilot,
Yeah.
we've got a pathway for you at Chandler Gilbert. We've got lots of opportunities just in that aerospace manufacturing. So in addition to our drones, so our unmanned aircraft systems program, we've got new programs in sheet metal, in composites, and then we're one of the sites for semiconductor technicians, which are just a great entryway into all of the growth in semiconductor microchip development here in Arizona. One of the ones that I'm really excited about that we're a national leader in right now is in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So Chandler Gilbert and Estrella Mountain. There were 3 of us presenting, Dr. Paula Livingston, the Dean of Workforce, and Dr. Ray Rivera, the President of Estrella Mountain, and then myself at the American Association of Community Colleges. And you were a mathematician, an accountant, and an English major trying to explain these concepts around artificial intelligence and machine learning, but in that way demonstrating how pervasive this will be in our future and how we all need to better understand the spaces. So a lot of emerging technology as well.
Dr. Peterson, what's your vision for the future? I mean, everything that you've talked about is so modern anyway. It sounds exciting, man. Where's the future going for you?
So I think there are a couple areas. The first one is we recognize that Chandler Gilbert is one of 10 colleges in the Maricopa system. And so how do we make sure that we're strengthening the system? How are we supporting just for example, having our Williams campus in East Mesa. So we overlap with Mesa Community College. How do we make sure that we are collaborating well in these spaces, sharing resources, that we're doing things that help Mesa thrive as we thrive as well? Some of that really is in the space of more focus, right? So as I mentioned, some of the pieces that we're going to do that we're going to continue to do well, and then be able to step back and really support our sister colleges to be the best they can be in their key areas. we're going to continue learning how to focus, learning how to be more deliberate. So I laugh when I explain this year, Chandler Gilbert is 30 years old. So we're now young adults and we need to decide what we're going to be as an adult. We've tried a lot of things out in our 20s and now we have to decide as we grow up who we're going to be. And it's a great space to be in and allows us to be really thoughtful. So sometimes having some limited resources provides the right space for us to have the greatest impact. And so I'm excited about those conversations as a college. I feel like we've got the right energy, we have the right people, and we have a good connection to our community and we're listening. So there's great work that we can do.
And so with all of that energy and bringing all this together, how does this all tie itself around public service?
I think that Chandler Gilbert has fared better than some colleges in our nation coming out of the pandemic because we really understand who our community is in our name. It's great that we can offer programs across the state or nationally, but the Southeast Valley is who we serve. We work really closely with our K-12 districts, so Higley, Chandler Gilbert, and Queen Creek. We have a new partner program with the city of Chandler where we've placed an intern coordinator to help them fill city jobs. So really thinking about how do we support our local municipalities. We're very closely tied to our chambers. So we do a lot of work in hosting events on campus, really leveraging the growth in semiconductor manufacturing, technology, finance that are in our communities. And we're really thoughtful about bringing our nonprofit partners together to think about how do we together provide the resources that our students and communities need.
Do you ever work with Sasan, who's the manager of Gilbert? He was our former interim president.
He's amazing, and he helped us try to identify some intern placements with the technology of the town of Gilbert. Yeah, there's just amazing people who want to partner with us.
Right.
It's just being creative.
Yeah, Sasan and I went to the EduMax, the Adobe conference on higher education in Las Vegas, and we sat there and watched, and I'm like, man, and so I just walked up to Sebastian, who's like third or fourth in command at Adobe. I said, you need to see what we're doing. And I showed him a video, and then we ended up being the keynote speaker for like 3-4 years in a row.
Amazing.
And I'll be doing that again at the end of May. But I had a good time. I got to know Sasan, and we bummed around Vegas talking big ideas and having pasta. I'm a foodie and he's not, so it was fun. I really enjoyed his company. And what we're talking about there is one of the reason we started this Maricopa Presidential Podcast. Chancellor Gonzalez has always been encouraging me, if you got an idea, go with it. So I'm like, well, we got to start a narrative about how we can, all the 10 campuses can come together as one family, one community. So I said, I'm going to start a presidential podcast. And that's how this got started. So we can start to, have the conversation about all the campuses. And it's been just absolutely amazing for me. I've got to meet several of the presidents, and you all are so gifted, and English teachers, yay. It's been really, really a great experience for me. We encourage you, if you are out towards the Chandler Gilbert Community College area, to stop by, have a visit. It sounds like they are doing amazing, amazing work over there with all sorts of avenues through occupational innovation as well as academic transfer. And the learning environments sound just exciting as could be. This is fantastic. Drop by and go see them. We like to give our guests the final word. What would you like to say to potential students?
I would say, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself and trust that we are here for you to be successful. We, across the Maricopa Community Colleges, we are built to really support learning and the success of our community. And we want you to succeed. And we'll find the resources and support you need and help you achieve that dream you have.
Excellent. I've believed that for many years. To be successful, you have to make the people around you successful. Thank you, everybody, for listening. In my dad's language, they say, Osta hawa hawa aya aski gali liga dona da kaha e. Take care of each other out there because we are all we have.